I'm Marissa, a 27-year-old Montana resident, Brennan, 34, and I have been married for 3 years. I think we're happy most of the time, but tonight I feel like screaming just by looking at him. To be honest, I'm still trembling from the entire ordeal, which began this morning. Let me clarify. When I arrived downstairs, Brennan was already awake and roaming about the kitchen as if he hadn't slept at all. But that's just him. He's constantly under a lot of stress, running on fumes. And still he believes that's enough. He has a dull office job that barely covers our expenses, and he puts in these ridiculously long hours, even while I value what he does. I can't help but feel stuck. We're not thriving, but we're also not struggling, and you're expected to succeed after marriage. You're meant to start a family. A baby is what I want. I've had my eye on one for a very long time. I wonder if I'm doing anything wrong because all of my friends are pregnant or have children. I've made an effort to be patient, but I can't wait indefinitely. I'm not going to be young for long. Brennan continues to act like we can't even discuss it until we reach some mystical savings account balance. My biological clock is simply ticking away in the meantime. So, yes, this morning we had another argument about it. I have no doubt that it won't be the last time. And it wasn't the first either. I acknowledge that it was probably not the best time to bring it up, but what else am I to do when he was hurrying off to work? He never comes home. And when he does, he's too exhausted to discuss anything significant. As soon as I said it, he sighed. Marissa, we've talked about this. I'm trying to make things better for us, but we can't afford a baby right now. And we never will if you keep thinking like that. He stroked his temples as if I were giving him a migraine. But I said, I'm not asking for a mansion or a nanny. I just want a family. Brennan, isn't that what marriage is about? Marriage is about partnership. Marissa, right now, I'm doing everything I can to keep us afloat. And you're acting like it's not enough. I shouted out, because it's not. Before I could stop myself. You're so focused on work that you're forgetting what we're supposed to be building together. I'm not getting any younger. Brennan, his hand gripped the counter's edge as he froze. Do you even hear yourself? You don't have a job. Marissa, raising a child isn't just about love. It's about resources. I'm trying to make sure we don't drown. The second we bring a baby into this, it hurt the way he said that, like I were a burden. We decided when we got married that I would stay at home. I take care of everything so he doesn't have to, including cooking, cleaning, and running the house. Doesn't that have some value? But no, money is everything to him. Tears were streaming down my face. But I resisted letting him see instead. I glared at him as if he were the enemy while I stood there with my arms crossed. He looked at the clock and moaned, great, now I'm late again. Thanks for that. Then, without even saying goodbye with a kiss, he picked up his suitcase and walked out. I could hardly see straight because I was so angry when all I'm asking for is the basic minimum. He acts as though I'm the issue. Having a child is what people do when they get married, not a luxury. Why doesn't he understand that? Still furious, I sat down with my phone after he was gone. I just started typing without giving it any thought. I vented about everything in a lengthy tirade that I shared on Facebook and Instagram. I expressed my feelings clearly, but I didn't mention him by name. I wrote about how difficult it is to be married to a man who is so preoccupied with his job that he loses sight of the wider picture. How annoying it is to feel as though you disagree on something as fundamental as beginning a family. How I'm afraid I'll regret squandering my finest years waiting for him to alter his mind. And how I can't believe I married someone who doesn't want children. Was it a dramatic moment? Most likely. However, I had to share it, and to be honest, it felt validating to see the likes and encouraging remarks pour in. People understood my perspective and sympathized with me. I didn't feel so alone for once. My phone rang a few hours later. Brennan was the one. Curiosity overcame me. And as soon as I picked up the phone, he said, "What the hell is wrong with you, Marissa?" He spoke in the low, irate tone that he only employs when he is extremely agitated. I shot back, acting foolish even though I was fully aware of what he was talking about. Excuse me? Don't act like you don't know. My mom saw your post. My coworkers saw your post. You put our private life on blast for the whole world to see. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? I rolled my eyes despite the fact that he wasn't me. Oh please, it's not like I named you or anything. People post about their relationships all the time. Not people who actually respect their partners, he said. I was unsure of how to respond to that, so I just remained mute while keeping my fingers on the edge of the table. You crossed a line, Marissa, a big one, and you don't even care. Do you? His voice changed from one of rage to one of disappointment as he sighed, after a lengthy silence. He said, "You know what?" He hung up after saying, "I'll see you when I get home. We need to talk." As simple as that. I'm sitting here now, looking at my phone and mentally reliving everything he said. I was simply being honest, therefore. I don't think I did anything wrong. He ought to be the one to apologize to me, if anything. However, I'm not sure how he sounded over the phone. Perhaps he's being dramatic, or perhaps I went too far. It was nearly 9 p.m. when Brennan finally arrived home. It wasn't out of the ordinary for him. I had spent hours sitting with my ideas and reading more comments on my posts by that point. While some were more critical, suggesting I shouldn't share my private problems online, others were really encouraging, writing things like, "I get it, girl, men just don't understand." In any case, their comments were irrelevant because they were unaware of the whole story. His expression was icy when he entered the room. He threw his bag on the chair, kicked off his shoes, and hardly gave me a glance. My chest tightened as I could feel the stress coming from him. But I didn't want to be the one to break the stillness. At last, he turned to face me, his face unreadable. "We need to talk," he remarked in a quiet, steady voice. I leaned on the counter with my arms crossed. "That's what I assumed." He pointed at the couch. "Sit down," I yelled. "I'm fine standing." I was already on guard. He was in for a surprise if he thought he was going to lecture me like I was a child. He let out a harsh sigh and combed his hair. "Marissa, what were you thinking posting that online? You embarrassed me, yourself, and our marriage." When I said, "Oh, here we go," I rolled my eyes. "This isn't just about you, Brennan." I was venting because I felt alone. "You don't get how hard it is for me to sit here day after day feeling like I'm not being heard. And do you think the solution to that is to broadcast our private problems to your friends and family?" "To my family. My mom called me today asking if we were okay. My coworker saw it. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is for me? Maybe? If you listened to me for once, I wouldn't have felt the need to post anything," I said. "You're always so focused on work and saving money that you completely ignore how I'm feeling." His voice rose slightly as he continued, "I ignore how you're feeling, Marissa. Do you even hear yourself? All I do is work to make sure we're stable. And you're sitting here complaining about your feelings while I'm trying to keep us afloat." "There it is again," I said, raising my hands in the air. "Money, money, money. That's all you care about." "I'm not saying money isn't important, but it's not the only thing that matters. I'm your wife. Brennan, you're supposed to care about what I want to, and I do," he stated, his voice suddenly piercing. "But what you want has to be realistic. You want a baby, but you don't want to talk about how we're going to afford it. You don't want to acknowledge that raising a child isn't just about wanting one. It's about being prepared." As the tears began to sting my eyes, I crossed my arms over my chest more tightly. "So what you're saying is I'm not good enough to be a mom? That I don't deserve a family because we're not rich?" he said. "That's not what I'm saying. And you know it," in a firm but calm voice. "I'm saying we need to be smart about this, and you need to understand that posting our problems online isn't just immature, it's destructive." "Immature?" I sneered, despite the fact that in my heart, you're the one who's so preoccupied with managing things that you're unaware of how miserable I've been. Even though I knew he was correct, his jaw tightened as he gazed at me. "For a considerable amount of time, you're miserable because you refuse to face reality. You don't work, you don't contribute financially. And yet you act like I'm the bad guy for trying to protect us from making a mistake we can't afford." I shot back, my voice shaking with irritation and rage. "Oh, so now I'm lazy? I do plenty around here, Bren. Just because I don't bring in a paycheck doesn't mean I don't contribute." He added, "I'm not saying you're lazy," before lowering his voice once more. "But if you want me to take your concerns seriously, then you need to start acting like an adult. Posting about me online, threatening to leave because I'm not giving you what you want when you want it, that's not how a partnership works." That last bit, Marissa, was like a kick to the belly. But I reacted angrily rather than allowing it to sink in. "Maybe we shouldn't be partners then. Maybe this marriage was a mistake." I noticed a change in his eyes, but his face remained the same. Slowly, as if he had been waiting for me to say it, he nodded. "If that's how you feel," he continued quietly, "then maybe you're right. But let me make one thing clear, I'll be fine on my own. You, on the other hand, I'm not so sure." I couldn't let him know that the remarks were more hurtful than I had anticipated. Wow, I exclaimed with a sour laugh. So that's how you really feel? You don't even care about this marriage, he continued to say. I care about this marriage, in an unbelievably serene tone. But I care about being with someone who respects me and what I'm trying to do for us. Right now, that's not you. My mouth opened to respond, but nothing came out. Let me know what you decide, he said, picking up his luggage and going upstairs. He didn't yell, call me names, or even raise his voice, but for some reason, his composure felt worse than if he had yelled at me. I stood for what seemed like an eternity without saying another word, my thoughts racing. Most of all, I wanted him to come back downstairs and apologize, to understand why I was furious, and to promise to do better. I wanted to shout, cry, and throw something. I'm sitting here now, wondering if I've pushed him too far this time. But he didn't. Tears began to fall as soon as I heard Brennan's footsteps go upstairs. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall, and at first there were only a few sniffles. I couldn't contain myself any longer, though. After realizing how cold he had been and how he had simply left like I didn't exist, the emotions came quickly and forcefully, and before I realized it, I was sobbing aloud. In the hopes that he would return, I sobbed loud enough for him to hear me. Perhaps he would feel awful after realizing how harsh he had been. Perhaps he would take a seat beside me, put his arms around me, and assure me that we would work things out together. However, the only sound coming from the house was my sobbing. He had no intention of retreating. I started crying even more after coming to that realization. But it wasn't for show. I was truly offended. I eventually wiped my face and picked up my phone. I wanted a support system and someone who could relate to my situation. My mother was the only person sprang to mind, so I called her. On the second ring, she answered. I started crying the moment I heard her say, Marissa, what's wrong? I blurted out, it's Brennan. In between sobs, we had this huge fight, and he just doesn't understand me. He doesn't care about how I feel, and I don't know what to do. Softly, okay, slow down, she said. Tell me what happened. I told the entire story without omitting any specifics. I told her about our disagreement this morning, how he made me feel like I was asking for too much, and how he wouldn't even entertain the idea of having a child. I even mentioned how aloof he had been upon his return home and how he pretended to be the villain, when all I needed was for him to understand my point of view. After I was done, I waited for her to concur, to tell me that Brennan was being irrational and that I was correct. Instead, she caught me off guard. Well, Marissa, she started with caution. I saw your post earlier and I have to say, I don't think that was the best way to handle things. I felt sick to my stomach. You saw it? Of course I saw it. You're my daughter, but sweetie, putting your marriage problems on Facebook for the whole world to see, that's not fair to Brennan, and it's not fair to you either. To that, I was at a loss for words. I was just venting, I answered defensively, expecting her to console me rather than criticize me. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It is a big deal, she stated in a forceful yet gentle tone. Marriage is private. The two of you need to work through your issues together, not with an audience. My cheeks were burning with shame. Well, what am I supposed to do then? He doesn't listen to me, Mom. He doesn't care about what I want. I didn't anticipate this conversation turning against me. Her response was, I don't think that's true. From what you've told me, it sounds like he's trying to be responsible. He wants to make sure you're both ready for a baby financially and emotionally. That's not a bad thing, Marissa. That's what a good husband does. I bit my lip as the tears started to flow once more. So you're taking his side now? She firmly stated. No, I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm on the side of your marriage. And if having a baby is really that important to you, then maybe it's time to think about how you can contribute to making it happen. I said, what do you mean? Despite the fact that I already had a bad feeling this was going badly. I mean, maybe it's time for you to consider getting a part-time job, she replied. It doesn't have to be anything big or stressful, but if you're serious about wanting a baby, showing Brennan that you're willing to work for it might make a difference. I scowled as my thoughts raced. It seemed sensible, even logical on paper. But the idea of actually applying for a job, it was stressful to get a job. The thought of juggling a job on top of everything else I already did around the house was overwhelming, and I hadn't worked since Brennan and I got married. I whispered, "That's easy for you to say. You had dad to support you." I also worked part-time when we were saving up to buy our first house, I reminded myself. Marriage is about teamwork, Marissa. It's not just about waiting for your partner to give you what you want. Sometimes you have to meet them halfway. I let out a sigh. It's not that simple. I'm not saying it's simple, she said. But you can't just dig your heels in and expect Brennan to do all the work. If you want him to take you seriously, you have to show him you're serious too. I didn't respond to him immediately, although I secretly knew she was right. Acknowledging that would have required me to own my error. And I wasn't prepared for that. Not quite yet, she said. Just think about it. Following a protracted silence, you don't have to decide anything tonight, but if you want your marriage to work, Marissa, you need to start thinking about what you can do to make it better, not just what you want Brennan to do. Yeah, okay, I said, even though I wasn't certain I meant that. I know, I responded. Although my voice was hardly audible above a whisper, Marissa, she said gently, you're my daughter and I love you. I just want you to be happy, but happiness takes work. It doesn't just happen. I sat there looking at my phone for a while after we hung up. I couldn't tell if her remarks made me feel better or worse, but they continued to reverberate in my mind. A part of me wanted to go upstairs and tell Brennan that I had considered it and was willing to compromise. But another part of me, possibly a larger portion, was still certain that he should approach me. I could only sit with the ambiguity for the time being, wondering what I should do next and whether it would even make a difference. After I hung up with my mom, I sat on the couch for what seemed like hours. I kept thinking about what she said, particularly the bit about teamwork. She was right. As much as I hated to accept it, here, Brennan wasn't the adversary. Even if he didn't always agree with me, he was attempting to maintain our stability and be responsible. And all I had done was make him feel degraded and ashamed. I grabbed my phone, went to Facebook, and gazed at the post I had just typed hours before. The comments seemed affirming, but today they felt incorrect. My worst tendencies were highlighted. And the longer I stared at it, the more ashamed I became. I took a big breath and finally hit erase. After that, I opened Instagram and followed suit. It was a start, but it didn't really make me feel any better. I knew I had to do more than simply remove a few postings if I wanted to make things better. This time, I had to speak with Brennan directly. He was in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, holding his phone when I went upstairs. When I walked in, he looked up. I sat down next to him and he remained silent. But I could tell he was still upset. Hey, I replied softly and tremblingly. He put his phone down, turned to me, and crossed his arms before asking, "Can we talk?" I took a long breath, searching for the proper words, and said, "I'm listening." I deleted the posts, I said, keeping my gaze fixed on the ground. He was silent for a while, and the silence made my heart race. You were right. I shouldn't have done that. It wasn't fair to you. Or us. At last, he gave a nod. His expression softened, but he remained silent. Okay. I've been thinking about what my mom said, I added, continuing to avoid his gaze. About how I need to meet you halfway if I want a baby. I don't like admitting this, but I know I haven't been fair to you. I mean, I've been so caught up in what I want that I haven't really thought about what it's been like for you, I said. I want to try to do better, in a voice that was almost audible above a whisper. I'm willing to get a part-time job if that'll help us save for a baby. I need your help. I don't know where to start or how much we'd even need to save. I can't do it without you. He grinned and blinked. You're serious? I asked forcefully. Yes. As I finally looked him in the eyes, he leaned back against the headboard and exhaled slowly, saying, I'm serious. With a lump in my throat, I nodded hastily and said, okay. I'll help you look for jobs and figure out a budget, but Marissa, this isn't just about money. We need to work on us too. The way things have been lately, it's not healthy, I know. And I'm sorry for what I said earlier about the divorce. I didn't mean it. I was upset. And I wasn't thinking. I know you were upset, he responded with a firm tone. But Marissa, you can't throw around words like that just because we're fighting. Marriage isn't something you threaten to walk away from when things get hard. I know, I said, my eyes welling with tears. His face softened even more as he nodded. I'm sorry, I really am. I wiped my eyes and chuckled a little. Thank you. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry too. Not for what I said, but for how I said it. I didn't mean to make you cry, he smiled. The first smile I'd seen all day, and said, I probably deserved it, maybe a little. After a while of sitting in silence, the tension between us began to slowly subside. I knew it would take time. And it wasn't a flawless resolution because we still had things to work on. But I felt like we were back on the same team for the first time in a long time. After a while, I asked, "When do we start looking for jobs?" And he gave me a quiet laugh. I put my head on his shoulder and grinned, saying, "Tomorrow, tonight we just breathe." I thought we were going to be all right for the first time in what seemed like an eternity. I can't claim that 6 months later, my life looks the same as I had hoped, but it has changed. To put it bluntly, I detest my part-time job at the neighborhood grocery shop, which I have been doing for a few months. That's not it, because it's not what I expected. Work is difficult. It's stressful in a manner I didn't anticipate, even though I work maybe 20 hours a week standing at a register scanning groceries and striking up conversations with people. It's a grind: the never-ending smiles, the monotonous work, and the occasional obnoxious customer. It allows me to view Brennan's daily struggles at his office job from a different angle. The fact that I only work a small portion of the hours he works and still feel exhausted when I get home is the biggest eye-opener. I'm not sure how he finds the stamina to keep our life going on some days when he works 12 or 14-hour days. I have a whole new respect for him that I will never express to him directly, at least not at this time. I didn't completely understand how much he had been carrying until I began to contribute. As well, the good news is that Brennan's steady work and my part-time income have allowed us to start saving money. It's steady but slow. Together, we have created a budget, and it has been enlightening to observe how minor adjustments, such as reducing eating out and keeping track of every dollar, can have a significant impact. Brennan has always been adept at handling money, and I'm beginning to understand why he insisted on being ready before having a child. Additionally, our communication has improved. It's improved, but it's not flawless. We both learned our lessons from that altercation 6 months ago. I became aware of the harm I had caused by not accepting responsibility for my behavior, and the significance of paying attention to Brennan's words rather than only responding emotionally. As a result, he has been more understanding with me and has taken the time to share his viewpoint without lecturing me. Although it's still a work in progress, we're making progress. We had a heart-to-heart about the future the other day. We discussed our objectives and reviewed our money while seated at the kitchen table. I felt like we were really on the same page for the first time in a long time. Brennan even acknowledged that if we've saved enough money to feel safe, he's beginning to feel more hopeful about the prospect of having a child possibly in another year or two. I felt like I was on fire after hearing him say it. Even on the days when I wanted to quit my job and return to the way things were, it provided me with the drive I needed to continue. I've taken away from all of this that marriage is a collaboration. One person getting what they want while the others make compromises is not the goal. It involves working as a team, making concessions, and occasionally putting aside your pride in order to achieve the greater good. I didn't see how much Brennan was already giving me: his time, his effort, his love, because I was so preoccupied with what I believed I deserved. To understand how much he has been doing for us all along, I had to put myself in his position. Even if only briefly, I've grown to view my work as a means to an end. But I still don't enjoy it and probably never will. It feels nice to know that I'm making a difference in Brennan's and my future, and is a step toward creating the life we both desire. I'm not going to wait for Brennan to do it by himself. In retrospect, I'm amazed at how nearly I ruined my marriage over something that could have been resolved with a little tolerance and forgiveness. Brennan is correct. Marriage isn't always simple, but if you're prepared to work for it, it's worthwhile, and I feel like we're actually working together now, for the first time in a long time. As for the baby, I'm confident that we'll be prepared when the time comes, both emotionally and financially, since we've become stronger through this whole ordeal, and that strength will help us get through whatever comes next.